All right, hey, what's up, guys? It's Sam OG, and I wanna come back on a topic that Eloy Sintron uh, gave to me. A couple of weeks ago when I first started, and when I came back to vlogging, and I asked him. I asked many people to give me topics to discuss, and he was kind enough to give me one concerning the distinction between, or what is common, what is similar, or between Genesis RPG and the Burning Wheel. And he seems to feel there is such a such common things, similarities, and distinction. And it took me so long to come back with this video. I was like, I understand what he means, but where do I start? How can I do that? So I came up with a concept, and I think I have something that I understand that maybe is not what he meant, but what I see. So, the Burning Wheel RPG is kind of like a generic system made for fantasy. It has strong tropes in it and everything, but there's no setting. And it's a very deep system that has many subsystems and all that. Very different from Genesys. Burning Wheel is a D6 dice pool system. That's it. And Genesys has his own dice. The Genesys RPG has the narrative dice. So I'm like, where do I start with this? So I wanna discuss this in around the concept of dice framing. So one thing that I feel that Burning Wheel and Genesys kind of like do that is similar is that they frame dice a lot. So before you roll the dice, you create a dice pool. D6 with Burning Wheel, narrative dice with Genesys. One thing that you do in both games is that you call out as a group, as a player most of the time, and with the GM, but sometimes other people listen and they chime in, and you call out advantages and disadvantages before rolling the dice, and you frame the dice roll, so dice framing, that's what I mean. And so you frame the dice roll with advantages, bonuses, stuff that makes sense in the scene and in the narration, and the disadvantages and all that. And so you create that dice pool, giving yourself advantages, GM, bringing you complication in it, and then you roll. And depending on the advantages and the disadvantages and the complications and all that and the bonuses, it's gonna frame the narration. So you create that dice pool, utilizing the system, the type of dice or the rules and all that, and then you roll, and then you interpret the dice. Now, this is where it's different. So in Genesys, the dice are like bones. It's narrative dice. They have symbols on them, and it's kind of like there's tables telling you what it means. So that is kind of like very different than Burning Wheel, because Burning Wheel, it's successes. It's like you 4, 5, 6, or 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on the shade. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so you get the successes, and then you have an obstacle, and you reach that obstacle. So it's very different, and therefore, unless you do a graduated test, which is kind of like similar to the narrative dice system thing, but it's still different. So that's what it's different. It's like, one, you interpret the symbols and create a narration out of that, and the other you just go by meeting an obstacle, or having a graduated result depending if you framed it that way in the first place. So what I want to discuss here is those games and those kind of system where you're framing the mechanic will frame the narration. So the die roll is built, is assembled by the players, GM and player included, equally, because it's kind of like a common discussion. When you play Genesys, and the GM has the black dice and like the blue and the red one, I think, or the purple and the red one, and then the player has the light blue, yellow and green, and what it creates is that kind of like a small discussion. Okay, so I have this advantage here, I have this, can I get a blue die for that reason for the scene? And everybody kind of like agree or not, and then the GM goes, yeah, so you're gonna be in trouble for that, so here's a red one, here's a black one, and, then you roll the dice, and then you interpret the symbols, and you need to reach a certain number, at least one success, and then you have it, and then if you have success over, you have more, and then the narration's gonna have to change after that. So you're gonna be describing what's gonna happen. Now, one thing that happens in Burning Wheel that is very important, and it's by the rules, that the GM have to tell the player in advance before the roll what's gonna happen if he fails. All right, and the player, when he states his intention, kind of tell in advance what he wants to get out of a success. That is unnegotiable, right? And so it creates that conversation. It frames the narration, around the building, the assembling of the dice in the dice pool. Because in Burning Wheel, you have so many things. You have forks, you have advantages, you have helping dice, you have Artha. All that comes into play before the roll. And just a little bit, it's kind of like in Genesys. And so in Genesys, this is kind of like the same thing. It's like you have this conversation before the roll, picking up the dice you need, and I don't remember. So Eloy, maybe you know that. Other people very familiar with Genesys, maybe you know that. But I don't know if you tell everyone in advance before the roll what's gonna happen. I don't think you can, because you need to see the result before. So yeah, so that's maybe a difference, right? Like in Genesys, you wait to see the result, and then the narration becomes like a teamwork. All right, so the GM is narrating the results on on his dices, and the player is narrating the results on his dices, and it creates that collaborative narration. In Burning Wheel, it's more like if you fail, the GM narrates, and then you pick up from there, and if you succeed, you narrate as a player, and then he picks up from there. So I think that would be like the way I feel between the resemblance and the similarities and the differences between Genesys and Burning Wheel. And I think, I'm not sure if it's what you had in mind, Eloy, but it took me a while, and I had to thought about it. I was like, well, what? Yeah, I see. I'm not sure to understand what exactly you meant, but at the same time, I had this like intuition that was kind of clear to me about the fact that there is something there to worth discussing. And I think it's the idea in RPG, and we see that maybe in more recent designs. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this. Maybe old school guys could tell me, but the idea of framing roles, or dice framing, or the idea that you assemble a dice pool before you roll. I know Shadowrun kind of does it, and it's been around for a while. It's like you build that dice pool and then you roll, and it's cool because as a player it feels very like it makes sense. It feels like you're qualities as a character, gets involved in the situation. It's more than just an abstract number. And also you kind of have to be a good player to make the most out of it, and from that it's interesting as well. And what is also nice with Burning Wheel, and especially with Genesys, is that the results are going to be very important to make the difference on the narration that comes after. So yeah, so basically, yeah, you got it, Eloy. Thank you for asking me for this topic. I hope it makes sense to you, and I'd like to hear you guys about that kind of mechanic. Do you have any example of games you've played recently that utilize that kind of stuff? Dice framing. I call it dice framing for the lack of a better word, but yeah. Let me know what you guys think. All right, talk to you soon.